friendly way. So I don't know how we add that in anecdotally, but maybe we can get more information by the time you're ready to write this.
Well, if nothing else, we should, highlight that as an important activity, understanding those dynamics and the service for it.
And I'm going to take two here. We're on time, Dan, so I'm going to take two here.
Going back to your slide of assets and strengths of transportation, we've been talking about PVTA, but it's not even listed as an asset or a strength. And I think it needs to be, it may be able to be improved, but it needs to be listed as a regional as well as local strength. And not to mention it as a strength, when we're sitting in a transportation building that has also a community college, I think is kind of interesting. I think we need to list PVTA as a strength. We need to list that we've got a model for better transportation connections in the center city, going back to Tim's point about geography. And I think another point, when you're talking about younger people and looking at the different geographies, the fact that the center city of Holyoke is a walkable area needs to be listed as an asset, because you can live in the center city, you could walk to most parts of the center city, and for younger people, that's a real asset, and that's who's wanting to live in urbanized areas. So that can be termed as an asset in terms of retaining a younger population. And I think people moving from Northampton to the center city is just an illustration of that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And one of the, I do a lot of work in transportation as well. One of the trends is actually, instead of calling it transportation, you call it mobility. And with mobility, that tends to pick up some of the walking and biking and other modes, which certainly is a strength not only of Holyoke, but a number of the downtowns in this region have a walkable, older urban core and infrastructure that you don't find everywhere else.
Well, in my world, as a part of the proof of customer service and service to the target industries and entrepreneurs, proof that the system can flex and has flexed over time, which goes to policy. How fast, what analyses are required to make that go. I'll be right back with you. Tim, do you have your hand up?
Yes.
And I'll come to you.
I'll just throw these out quickly, depending upon the box. On the strength side, Alan mentioned ports in the sense of airports, but I think universally overlooked is that we have a freight port in the CSX Rail Freight Yard in West Springfield that serves our region plus at least half of Connecticut. And again, as energy issues come up more and more, there's a movement over there, so I wouldn't want to miss that. Another one that I put it in this particular category is broadband. You move data now. The mobility of data is off the broadband system, and that's one of our premier assets, whether it's 91 or the network that Holyoke Gas and Electric is built inside. So I put it in there.
Yep, okay.
The other one that we've heard a lot about from site selectors, which is tied to transportation, is the fact of where are you with respect to transportation logistics? Can you drive down your costs? And again, at least tell me if I'm wrong, Alan, the site selectors seem to give feedback that says Holyoke and the region et al. Is in a strategic advantage to drive down the logistical costs that, again, I think is something we ought to tout if it's particularly important to site selectors. On the other side, on the weakness side, and it goes to some of the questions that were just brought up on transit, is a continuing constrained federal and state transportation funding picture. I mean, we send $40 million out of this region a year to support the MBTA. If I had $40 million to work with the PVTA, we have a remarkably different public transit system than we have here now. So money is a constraining factor, big time, for the valley across the board, whether you're talking highway, transit, bridges. Another one I don't want to forget, because it's what I call an attraction amenity, particularly for quality of life, retention of young folks, is a growing set of assets in terms of bicycle and pedestrian facilities. Ones that we have and ones that are on the drawing board, including those in the city itself. So those are a couple of thoughts I had on this particular.
Good, thank you, Tim.
We have 2 more comments here. To give you a sense of timing and perspective, we're running to 4. You've got 2 more to go. I think we're okay. So, sir, thanks for your patience.
I just perhaps want to try to fill a gap, and terms like broadband, quality of life, green energy have come up. I don't quite understand why electric vehicles haven't made it to an opportunity or a strength for Holyoke. And since I'm from South Hadley, I'll throw in South Hadley as well. It does seem to me that there is a trend towards electric vehicles. Communities that can be electric vehicle friendly, I think are going to have a real up in the future. So it does seem to me to be an opportunity or strength, but it didn't make it to the chart, and that surprised me.
So help me for a second. Keep the mic. This might be obvious to everyone, but why is Holyoke in the region prime for electric vehicles?
Because you have clean electricity. You produce electricity that does not pollute. So if you want to have a green car, you can't just have a green electric car. You have to have a green electric car that's charged with green energy, which Holyoke has. And you also have
Okay.
commuting distances that are very amenable to the electrical vehicle.
Okay.
Can I just add to that, Eric?
I mean, if I'm butchering it, I apologize, but I'm going to translate that for a second. You're saying, is it possible to set an ambition to have a zero-emission city? I mean, if you translate that, you'd say it's like a zero-emission city. You'd say you'd have electric vehicles, green energy powering your homes, high levels of efficiency. I mean, granted, that's almost like an ambition more than it is an immediate, in my view, an opportunity. I mean, but it's an opportunity as opposed to necessarily a strength, but you can start with the district.
And that's a huge national discussion. I mean, that should, be ringing a bell for everybody. You still have a question? One more, and then we'll move on to the next.
I'm just going to pipe in for
please,
a
Kathy.
second. We are working on electric charging stations right now at the Holyoke Mall with the gas and electric.
I just want to back up the thing about the bike paths and hiking trails and the canal walk and stuff like that. I've been working with Craig Della Penna, who's actually setting up a whole complex right over the canal here on Dwight Street, and he runs Pedal to Properties in Northampton, which is targeting people who want to buy properties near bike paths, and he's had a tremendous rate of growth. And he's done a lot of research on this, and basically everywhere you build a bike path, economic development follows, just like puddles after a rainstorm.
Thanks, sir. Dan, we got just enough time.
Okay, and part of what has come to light in the discussions, both earlier today and now, are that some of these categories, well, we're going to have to, make sure that we rethink them, because Tim brought up broadband, and I, for better or for worse, had included it in what I'm calling physical infrastructure. This first graphic shows Center City commercial and industrial business development, square feet of development over a couple of decades going back to 1979. This is from the work on the urban renewal plan that came out a couple months ago. The blue bar is 1979 to 1988. A little bit in retail restaurant in terms of square feet, a whole bunch on the industrial warehouse side, small auto-related, small office. Next decade, had some of that activity, more office actually. And then over the past decade, we've seen virtually no new development. I mean, that's the sort of stark picture that came there. This, I'm sure, is more on new development as opposed to rehabbing existing buildings. I don't know if that's where you're going, John.
Yeah, because we've rehabbed about 50,000 square feet of office space
And
in the last 8 years.
okay, well, good. And that's something that I'm guessing was not picked up in that work, but that's important to know. because that is certainly one of the stronger opportunities in the center city is rehabbing existing. Here, this is a quick map of the fiber optic network. This comes up over and over as a strength in terms of north-south and east-west connectivity on the fiber side, and the opportunities to link into sites in Springfield, Holyoke, Chicopee. That's critical, especially if we're looking at digital technology type companies. There's a lot of detail here. I'm not going to go through all of this. We had a massive report generously shared with us, which was it was an 85 parcel evaluation related to the High Performance Computing Center site evaluation. I like to think of that as being 8 sites, because what happened in most cases is that and I've actually got a map if anyone wants to see it. What was really looked at were 8 sites, and most of the sites had multiple parcels as part of them. And so we tried to boil down some of the information from that evaluation. Most of it is 7 of the 8 sites were in downtown. There was one greenfield site, which of course was the only site that was a single parcel. All the others in the downtown area were sites that would be combined. But there's a lot of space and there's a lot of opportunity to combine parcels. There are some known environmental conditions that would require remediation. Some requirement of demolition depending on your use and what particular parcel you're talking about. It obviously varies, as John knows. Power distribution requirements can be met at these locations. City sewer available. There's a number of findings. You'll read the details, and when we post this online, I'd like to keep moving.